Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Women and Girls Foundation's web show, In the Movement. I'm Camila Rivera-Tinsley, and each month we interview incredible people in our community who are working towards creating a more sustainable, just, and equitable future with conversations that are focused on gender, racial, and environmental justice. This month, I'm honored to have as my special guest Dr. Marita Garrett, and she's going to join us and tell us all about her work and about her passions. Dr. Garrett, thank you so much for joining us today.
Camila, thank you so much for having me. So happy that you're at the helm of the work of Women and Girls Foundation, a organization that is just near and dear to my heart, and even more in times such as. So I'm just happy to be here. Thank you again.
So, Marita, can you please tell us why is civic engagement important to you?
I laugh because, just the timing. So civic engagement has always been important to me, but especially after the timing of post-election, and we see Google results where folks maybe didn't know about tariffs and doesn't know about the three branches of government. But civic engagement is so important to me because if you don't know how things work or kind of your role in society, as what people say, like if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. So whether you want to say that's interchangeable for politics, civic engagement, however it may be, but just being understanding of the communities that we're in and the parts that we play and the roles that we play, because also with those roles come power. So one should never feel powerless because you are a citizen of a community. You are part of that citizenry. So with that, growing up with two strong Black women, specifically my mother, but for historical context, my grandmother, who grew up and was raised in Jim Crow South. So when her and her family migrated to Akron, Ohio, where I'm from, the North, she didn't take any of a civic duty or the civic liberties that were finally they were able to realize for granted. So every election, we were out there voting, whether it was a special election for the trash collector, whatever it may be, we were out there. I'm going to the polls as young as like 5 or 6, as young as I can remember, and sitting in, watching the TV shows with her, listening to AM news, all of these things. So it was one of those things where it was just like already emboldened in my DNA. And then just, that natural curiosity. Okay, well, why are things like this? Or why do you support this candidate? And what are the issues pertinent to you? So civic engagement is so important to me because I know our ancestors, number one, fought for that right to have their voices heard, but even more importantly, for good reason, because that's how we know how to move within our spaces.
What a powerful legacy and foundation that was laid for you. And I am so grateful that you had a grandmother and a mother that took you to the voting booth with them and laid that foundation. So it sounds like that is the space where your interest in civic engagement began. I don't know if folks know that you want to run for mayor, but what made you want to run for mayor?
So what made Okay, so it's 2 parts, and there's always like a couple parts with me because there's never one way, and I don't have a linear path. So I wouldn't have ran for mayor if I didn't serve on council first. So I
Oh.
did a term on council in Wilkinsburg for 4 years, and because of that, that's where I wanted to run for mayor. So on council, again, goes back to civic engagement, all goes back to civic engagement. A lot of times people hear the titles mayor, president, governor, and think that person has all the power, three branches of government. Yet it's the legislation or legislative branches that really make those decisions. So while I was on council, we have 9 legislative members on council in Wilkinsburg. And we did a lot of great work, a lot of great work that I'm proud of, really honored for those 4 years of serving on council. Yet our then mayor, great gentleman, just wasn't as public facing as he could have been. So all this great stuff that we were doing in council chambers wasn't getting out to our communities. So one of the reasons I wanted to run for mayor was to use a more visible platform to showcase the work of what council has done. But even more importantly, information gather. What are some challenges that other similar municipalities have overcome that we could use in Wilkinsburg? And what are some highlights that have worked for us that I could share out to other communities as well too? So really being that figurehead, that vocal advocate. So a lot of times folks don't necessarily want to leave legislative because you have that vote and you have that power. But it's also about your influence and your platform. So I wanted to really use being mayor as a continuation on a larger platform, more visible of the work that we were doing on council.
Thank you so much for connecting those dots, and sharing how important all of those arcs are. Because, as you said, we focus on the shiny thing. I think a better
Exactly.
question that I could have asked would have been, so what was the thing that made you say, I want to run for what made you want to become a council person?
There we go. Okay, so no, I'm kidding, but no. A need, like a lot of times with women, we run on needs-based, community-based decisions. And data shows, and Dr. Dana Brown of the Center for Women in Politics at Chatham always says the facts and figures that women have to be asked 7 times to run for something before they run. I wasn't necessarily asked 7 times, but I had to think about it about 7 times before I decided to run for office. But, really with Wilkinsburg, I've been in our community for 15 years. So at the time when I ran for council, I was, in the community for about 3 or 4 years, and I had purchased a home in 2010, and my background is in outreach coordination. So I was used to going to all these different communities in Allegheny County, but I really wanted to focus on my new community of Wilkinsburg. How can I be of service? I never will go into a place thinking like somebody hasn't been doing what they need to do. So let me see how I can jump in. I'm always coming like people probably just need capacity. So how can I best plug into existing efforts? So initially I joined some committees. With the Wilkinsburg Community Development Corporation. Then I started attending council meetings. And then in 2013, it came out about our school district, where our school district, the then administration, there was a lot of fiscal irresponsibilities, corruption. Students weren't being getting the resources that they needed. So it was a really pivotal election year, election time. So I ran for office, but even then, I was still trying to, figure out, okay, well, how's the current council person? Like, how's she doing? It can't be that bad. And, who else wants to run? I'll knock on some doors or host a meet and greet. But again, it comes to I can't ask someone to do something that I'm not willing to do of myself. So I thought about it 7 times, prayed on it more than 7 times, and that's what led me to run for office. But again, it was based off of a needs base. It was based off of, wow, this is my community. This is really a pivotal point where we can either go backwards or forwards. And, forward is just how I move. So, what can I do to help assist with that? And I ran for office.
Amazing. So thank you so much for telling us that story, which leads me to Civically, the organization that you founded. Can you tell us what is Civically and what inspired you to create Civically?
Yeah, civically is my heart's work. This is honestly all the things that, through my background in community outreach, through being an elected, this is really where I feel the impact of, meeting civic engagement with addressing the basic and immediate needs of folks. But I also will have to say, because again, my path isn't linear, civically came from me being an elected and seeing the multiple gaps that government can't fill. So I can do great things legislatively. I could do great things as an executive branch holder, but addressing the direct needs of our community members, such as like the Free Store, which is one of our staple programs, a place where folks can Free Store Wilkinsburg, a place where folks can just get what they need, regardless of a financial hardship or just to save some dollars, material goods, gently used items. We have a partnership with Animal Friends where once a month they donate pet food. So that's a pet pantry. We have a career closet. And government, and I want to take a step back because government isn't necessarily meant to move fast. So, again, knowing that's why civic engagement is so important because knowing the roles of all the components of a community. So it's not that government is necessarily meant to fill some of these gaps, but government can help support organizations that are able to fill those gaps. So Civically first started with the Free Store Wilkinsburg and then realizing there's so much more of a need, going to the free store. I always operate from a place of how can we not just survive? How can we actually thrive? So I want our communities to be self-reliant and self-sufficient. And maybe there won't be a need for a free store Wilkinsburg, but how do we get to that? Well, we get to that by civic engagement. We get to that through literacy, whether it's health literacy, civic literacy, information, reading literacy, all of those things. How do we make sure we're not left out of the narrative of our future? Ownership. And that's what also led us to purchase the building that we're in, the Hunter building, which happens to be the largest commercial property in Wilkinsburg. So all of those things tie into, thank you. All of those tie into ensuring our future while also putting us in the best position for vibrancy and self-sufficiency. So civically, to tie it up in a bow, is an umbrella nonprofit where we do focus on community development in terms of promoting civic engagement while addressing the basic and immediate needs of our community members.
And I have so many thoughts
Yeah.
about how it would be so wonderful to have you share your personal story with our middle school Girl Gov students. We have Girl Gov High
Oh,
School, but we've got a
okay.
middle school program, and that is focusing specifically. We partner with schools and with other community organizations that are in areas of high need, and that
Mhm.
happens to be that we're serving Black communities right now. And it's so
Yeah.
important that these young girls are able to see a woman like you who is established and doing something that they can do in the future. So I would love for you to come and share this story with those young people. I think that they would love it.
I would love to do that because representation matters. And most importantly, it's not about the title, it's about your purpose. And so that's one of the things is that I'm going to mess up this quote, but the Sunda Duckett of TIA Craft, she says, I rent my title, but I own my character. So a lot of people, when I didn't seek reelection for mayor, were like, well, what's going to happen to Free Storm, what's gonna happen to Civically? I'm like, oh, that's still going on. Like, mayor was an elected office, grateful for the opportunity, but life does go on. And I'm still doing this work. I didn't need the title of mayor or being a council person to do this. So I really think it's so important for the youth and adults as well too, where sometimes we get so caught up on titles. I need this title to do that. No, you don't. You need the purpose, you need the passion, and you need the commitment.
Yes, amen to that. So let's pivot a little bit and let's discuss the outcome of the election and how close we were to not only electing the first female president, but the first woman of color. How did you feel seeing the results? And what would you say to young women and girls who felt devastated or disappointed by those results?
A lot of us remember 2016. The consensus is we weren't surprised. That gut punch was a little bit duller because 2016, we just really, had this pristine view of, I'm not going to say pristine view, but of the America. And it was like, of course, you're going to vote for the common sense candidate and things of that sort. And the numbers came back very loud and clear last Tuesday evening slash Wednesday morning. And that's just a reality we're in right now. Now, what I would say is I've been encouraging everyone, and even with my students in the class I teach at Pitt, for them to watch the concession speech, no matter how sad they are, of Vice President Harris, because we can't give up. We can't, give up. We can hurt. Um, rest, strategize, relax, because joy is an act of resistance. So we cannot go into despair. The work continues. And I think specifically to Black women and Black girls, numbers don't lie. We vote how we vote. We vote for the betterment of not only ourselves but our country as well too. And we have to continue moving in that way. We cannot let, we can't let bigotry and hate win. Maybe some of those numbers and things, won that last week, but the work continues. And actually, to me, it comes back to civic engagement because I honestly don't think people realize a lot of what they voted for. Again, as we saw, Google results come, can I return my vote? What is a tariff? Now the Supreme Court, is that a 4-year term? No, it's lifetime. So again, it's like just so much miseducation and not knowing our history. And I might be going off on a tangent, but that's one thing that's just wild to me because I remember when I first learned about the Holocaust back in 8th grade, and I was just like, oh well, this could never happen again. Like, in our day and age growing up in society, we would never let this happen again. We know right from wrong and things of that sort, but history can repeat itself. But for those who remember and who have learned that history and know better to, move forward and really look out for our communities, we have to continue moving forward. We cannot give up. We cannot despair. So, the next 4 years, and especially Black women, Black people as a whole, really, we we know all the disparities too well. We know how to fight. We know the struggle too well. So I know, at the end of the day, we will be fine. Yet this country is going to have some reckoning to do over the next 4 years. And America is still a young country. They say most civilizations finally find their hold about 500 years. We're 248 years old. So there is still, as much as it was a gut punch for folks, I still feel that there is still some hope and opportunity for this country to still rebuild and decide in what the way in the future it looks like. It's not going to look like how we thought it was going to look like, that's for sure. But there is still an opportunity to build and figure out what can America look like.
Thank you for asking that very, very big, big question.
I can do
Um,
it a week out now. I had time to.
yes, and this episode will be airing in January, so we'll have a
Oh,
chance.
so okay.
We will have a chance to reflect even then as we see
Okay.
what was that first 100 days in office.
Oh,
What will
yeah.
that look like for us? And so I think
Mhm.
that this question will resonate even more at that time. Uh,
Mhm.
I try to stay as bipartisan as I can. And I just think having programs like Civically and having people in spaces like you is
Mhm.
more important than it's ever been, because
Yeah.
it's more clear to me than it's ever been how important education is, and making sure that people have access to high quality education,
Yes.
civics education, not just focusing, yes, it's important to know science and math, and those core subjects, quote unquote core subjects, but how do we live in a society when we don't understand the rules of that society? So just reiterating things that you've already said. So beyond voting, which is very important, what do you want people to understand about being engaged? And I think you've touched on this in some other spaces, or in some other questions, but please share with us, what do you think, beyond voting? What do you want people to understand?
Voting is kind of almost the bare minimum, how I look at. It definitely it's needed, it's civic duty, so to me, that's just, like, the first component, being an active part of your community, and community can mean so many different ways. Community can be volunteering, community can be mutual aid, community can be knowing your neighbors and, just checking in on your neighbors, so however community can look like to someone, That to me is another building block of civic engagement. Book clubs, things of that sort where you're discussing various different issues. So it doesn't necessarily have to be, oh, I went to a council meeting or I went to this public hearing. It can just be having conversations with your neighbors, having conversations in groups that maybe don't have the same mindset or ideology as you. That's how we'll continue to build strong communities and, more importantly, diverse communities in all the different ways.
People want to learn more about Civically Inc. And they want to get involved. Where can they go?
You can go to our website, www.civicallyinc.org. We're also Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram. Also, volunteering, Free Store, Wilkinsburg, our fresh market. We have so many different programs that you can volunteer. You can find those opportunities on our website, also at freestorewilkinsburg.org. And also, if there's ways you think could make a good partnerships, community partners, there's power in partnerships. So we always welcome that. More than ever, we can't work in silos. So we're always open to partnerships and collaboration ideas. So please find us. You can find me. I I don't have a singular like tag, on all the handles, but you can find me. You can find me.
Yes. Yes. All right. Well, thank you so much for all the work that you do in your community. And thank you for helping that work to reverberate out into other communities. If you want to learn more about the Women and Girls Foundation, please go to wgfpa.org. Stay connected, stay involved, follow us, subscribe to our newsletter. And just thank you for sharing your expertise and your space and time with us today.
All right. Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.